Today, I will be talking about a concept this man created. Environmental racism was founded by Ben Chavez. He coined the phrase environmental racism to describe the proposed Warren County dump site. In 1987, Chavez authored a report to the United Church of Christ Commission on Racial Justice. His report, Toxic Waste and Race in the United States, which located hazardous waste sites by zip code, showed that almost every major city in the country located its hazardous waste in the areas whose residents were members of minority communities. The report helped to spark a nationwide environmental justice movement. Now that society understands what environmental racism is, we can look back at how this has affected specific communities in the past, such as the story of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, spreading the knowledge of the dangers pesticides had on the environment. Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta were co-founders of the drive to organize the United Farm Workers of America. Together, they made protection from pesticide exposure for farm workers a top priority. Through their work, as well as the work of Rachel Carson, increasing numbers of people began to realize that the goals of a safe and healthy workplace and the goals of a healthy environment were intertwined. People also began to realize that the old dependence on trusting experts was not enough and that citizen participation was essential.
I got $100 check from my grandma, and my dad said I need to put it in the bank so it can grow over the years.
Well, that's fantastic. A really smart decision, young man. We can put that check in a money market mutual fund. Then we'll reinvest the earnings into foreign currency accounts with compounding interest, and it's gone.
What?
It's gone.
I use this clip to display Cesar and Dolores' concept of do not always trust the professionals. We get to see firsthand how environmental racism works and how it can destroy a community. Ciba Geigy was a company that made dye, and it moved to Toms River because it liked the sandy soil in a nearby river for easy dumping of pollutants. The Toms River Water Company supplied the entire township with drinking water, 1 mile downstream from where Ciba was dumping their pollution into the river. If you lived in the town, it was likely you would drink the contaminants that Ciba was dumping into the river. Here is an example of when Ciba used money to hide the pollution that they're giving off. By 1965, there was a particularly high amount of pollution that had been done by Ciba, and there was conspiracies of water contamination because people who swam in Toms River would have their eyes closed and their nose loose smell while swimming. But Ciba paid the press to keep this under the wraps so word did not get out of how detrimental their pollution was. This next topic is the main problem that Ciba did. Ciba received a permit from the U.S. Corps of Engineers to build a 10-mile pipeline to dump their chemical waste right into the ocean. The United States Army Corps of Engineers was secretly paid a lot of money by Ciba to get this permit passed, which should have never been allowed to pass. This shows how money caused environmental racism of those along the coastline being poisoned because of Ciba's backdoor deal. Another example of environmental racism is when Ciba bought a chicken farm to secretly dump thousands of barrels in the back 2 acres of a chicken farm. Ciba hired a man who took several thousand barrels of waste and started burying them in trenches, yet the Union Carbide did not take interest. In 3 months, over 5K barrels were illegally dumped, but the culprits were later arrested after this. The county waited another 7 months before the barrels were removed, and then no other efforts were taken to clean up the chemicals. After all of the illegal dumping had discovered and publicized, the water company added another well 1 mile south of the chicken farm dumping. For the next 12 years, the Tom River population would continue to grow due to better beaches and an increase in tourists. But cancer started to become more prominent as well. Children were born with cancers and major disorders. A story of a woman named Linda Gillick had a son with cancer in the nervous system. When she would feed the baby, she mixed the powder with tap water, and later scientists believed this caused cancer. Originally, no one believed his cancer was attached to any cause from pollution until Ciba Ocean's pipeline burst in the middle of a busy intersection, and the stink could not be ignored. The smell was so bad that people created an investigation and were shocked to learn that this pipe was dumping this toxic waste into the ocean all day, every day for 13 years. Not many people knew the pipeline existed because Ciba paid off the government to keep it a secret. This caused global investigations to go underway, and over 2 years, more and more facts emerged about the pollution, and over this time, more and more kids were born with cancer. All of these pollutants in the water caused Toms River to have a high cancer cluster. Cancer cluster is defined as a geographic area with a statistically higher than average occurrence of cancer among its residents. Of newborn babies, there was a 40% cancer rate over the summer of 1970, and the majority of these cancers were the cancer of the nervous system, which had a 60% survival rate. A solution to this problem was found by Linda Gillick. She started an organization called Ocean of Life to go after Ciba for their toxic dumping within the community. When Linda reported their findings to the government, they were quickly and repeatedly turned down. The government gave Linda's organization no attention, causing more injuries and unfixable permanent damage to communities since SIBA kept dumping. Only later in the 90s did a sufficient amount of evidence come out whether the water supply had been found to have a high amount of cancerous chemicals. I bring up this discussion to connect Tom's River and the environmental racism to the main concept of the class, which is sustainability. We can see firsthand how acting against the three principles of sustainability, which are economy, society, and environment, the seventh generation will be hurt or may not even be reached.